Welcome. This is a tutorial for the piece January Winds. Now the first step is to spend some time listening and studying the piece before we even play anything. So I can play it while you watch your sheet music, and you can watch the right hand or left hand or just both hands together. You can also listen and watch my hands and just see how they move. See which areas of the keyboard my hands go in, and kind of watch the technique of how my hands are moving. And also we can look at the sheet music and just kind of study and figure out what's going to happen throughout this piece. So let's do that first. It's 2 pages, and hopefully you'll notice there are kind of little sections. So these first 2 lines, you see a repeat sign right there. So this section is going to repeat. And you can tell, without even looking at individual notes, you can tell it kind of has a uniform texture throughout. And then if we go down here, these next 2 lines do something similar. They have sort of a uniform idea. The left hand is pretty busy playing a repeated pattern of 1/8 notes, and the right hand has some slower, longer notes. Okay, and that's going to repeat. And then if we go to the next page, similarly, the next 2 lines have something similar to the last 2 lines. They have 1/8 notes busy going in the left hand and a melody in the right hand. And if you looked a little closer, you could kind of tell that the pattern is different. You see here, I'm noticing the left hand has the same pattern, 4 notes repeated over and over again on this line. And then it changes. This one's different than that one. So this one's different. And notice I'm not even saying note names. I'm just kind of noticing overall like patterns that I can look out for. And then if I go over here, it starts out the same at 17 that it did on measure 9. But notice it changes right here. It looks almost the same, but see that first note is different. So this one started on an A, and that one starts on a G, but then it still has similar looking notes, which is why it's easy to miss that those are different. So those are the same, and these are the same, and then look, it changes again if you look really closely. So there's a different left-hand pattern here. We'll get more into that specifically. Now, when the first section has a repeat, it only has a repeat here, but you still go back to the beginning and repeat the whole section. After that, all these sections have a repeat sign at the end and also at the beginning. That's so that it's clear that it's not going all the way back to the beginning, it's just going back to the beginning of this section. So that's what we see here. Again, the repeat sign at 17 and at the end of 24. And by the way, I'm using these measure numbers to help me know which measures I'm talking about, so you can use those in your sheet music. And now I don't see any repeat signs after that. And if I look kind of broadly, I can see this looks like a different idea than I've seen in the rest of the piece, these 4 measures. And then if I look here at these last two lines, they look a lot like the first 2 lines. And if you look really closely, you'll see they're almost exactly the same. The only difference being the last measure is different. So all the lines have 4 measures, except for this last line. You can see it has a 5th measure, and that looks like a little ending. Okay. So now you kind of know how to navigate it. If I play it, you can follow along and not get lost in the repeats, hopefully. So don't be afraid to listen several times to really feel like you get to know the piece very well. So keep track of where this is in the video so that you can fast forward to this section. By the way, I'm going to be using pedal for almost the entire piece. We'll see what happens. Okay. And if you looked at the beginning, this is an important little note. It says this piece could be played slowly and meditatively, or quickly and agitated, or anywhere in between. So how fast you play it is up to you. It also says the dynamics are also up for interpretation. So there's not a lot of that written in. Usually you see piano or forte or crescendo lines or things like that. And there's none of that. So there's a lot of freedom. So as I play it, you can like the way I play it and say, hey, I want to play it just like that. Or you can play it slower. And maybe I'll play it differently a few times, a few different ways, so that you can hear and get some ideas on how you want to play it. And here is January Winds. All right, let's try listening to it a little faster, maybe a little more aggressive with the dynamics as well. All right, here it is again, January Winds. Okay, so there's a couple different ways you can imagine playing it. Again, it could go even slower than the first time. You know, just very meditative. You know, winds aren't always windy, they can be almost non existent. So you could have this be your meditation piece. Just listen to those beautiful harmonies. Or you could really push it and see how fast you could go. You know, anywhere in between is great. All right, let's talk about how we can practice it. So first, obviously, getting to know it is part of practicing it. So studying it without playing it is practice. So studying the form of it. So we can go section by section. The first section, we said, you know, it repeats twice. And if I notice, all of this is the same. This the same notes in the left hand doing this pattern, and then the right hand. And these are the notes A, C, and E. So it's making this little pattern in A minor. A minor is A, C, and E, as you know, I hope. And the left hand start is doing this. Pinky to thumb, just up and down, fingers 5, 3, and 1. Just back and forth. Kind of like a, I mean, you can use fingers only. It gets a little hard to control if you're trying to keep all of this hand and arm stiff and use fingers. So you kind of just let your arm move also. Now, if you focus too much on that and try to move only arm, then that also feels awkward. So it's just like when you pick up a pen off the table, you wouldn't hold the arm still and only use fingers to pick up a pen, and vice versa. You wouldn't like use floppy fingers and try to use only an arm. So try to make your piano playing as natural as possible. So a motion like this, which is back and forth, can do a little bit of tiny bit of rotation in the arm and with the fingertips. So a good practice strategy is to not focus on playing measure 1, 2, and 3, and 4 exactly the way they're written, but just to get this idea down, because as you can see, it's going to happen through the entire piece. So just practice this idea, not counting, not focusing on how fast, just making sure it feels totally natural and easy. Okay, so that's strategy number 1, just practice that. Okay, and then when you feel like you've got a good handle on that, you can come straight to the piano and right into it without any sort of figuring it out. Then you're in great shape for the next step, which would be practice changing positions. So between measures 2 and 3, it's changing positions, and then again between 4 and 5, and then 6 and 7, it keeps changing. So it's here in A minor, then it's going to move down, everything down, all fingers, all the notes go down 1 to G major. So if you struggle with going in this pattern and then moving down without bumps or bruises, you could that could be your practice strategy, is get the pattern going and then see if you can move down. And now it's always going to change at the pinky. So the pinky and then the pinky would be the next position. So you could just do that and go down 1. And when you're ready, feel like you get it, after that third finger on the way down, you're going to stretch the pinky and start a new position. And you can just keep going. Doesn't matter if the music doesn't go down this low. You're just practicing the idea of moving down. Here it comes again. Ready, here I go. Let's try it again. Ready, here I go. And that's the kind of practice strategy, is just the idea of getting your hand to move down. The right hand's doing the same thing in mirror motion. So as my pinky in my left hand plays, so does the pinky on my right hand. I should say finger 5. Pinky is not the piano term for that. So they're moving in mirror motion, which is actually really easy to do because that feels more natural than thumbs and pinkies and then going to pinkies and thumbs, Now, that might actually be easier in one way because you're doing the exact same thing. It might feel like, I'm doing different notes. But physically, it should feel kind of natural once you get going. So you can practice the right hand. Actually, you should practice the right hand because its motion going down is going to feel different, because in left hand, you had to stretch down farther down that way. This time, I kind of have to what I call squish. So my right hand pinky is going to start the new position, and I'm not stretching, I'm squishing from my third finger to my fifth finger like this. And squish. Let's try it again. Right here is another squish. And I'm kind of anticipating, so I know that this pinky here is my last one on D. I'm going to squish even before that happens. Now this squish happens here, but I'm also moving my wrists, actually both wrists, this way. If you try to do it here and then sort of do like some people will do a stiff arm and they'll just try to move their fingers. Also just think of it as just gliding sideways. And then, yeah, so you want to be practicing each hand because they're going to have a slightly different way of doing that. And same as left hand, practice the idea first without even counting. how many times you do it. You just want to make sure it feels comfortable before you're ready to make the switch. Oh, see? And you want to make sure there's smoothness in those transitions so that you don't have to pause even for a millisecond. You can just smoothly glide from position to position. Okay. And man, what a great thing to practice. You can just practice that all day and sound amazing. And people will be like, if there's anyone else in the house, they'll be like, wow, what is that you're practicing? What song is that? And it's not even the whole song. You'd be like, oh, it's just the beginning of the song. And they're like, well, you know. So you can have a lot of fun just practicing those. And you can even try different chords or different positions. Okay. Now, when we get to the melody in these next two sections, let's start with the right hand. It stays in A minor position. So it's only going to use these 5 notes, A, B, C, D, E. So this is your opportunity to get really well acquainted with those 5 notes in the treble staff. Okay? So if you need to, get a pencil and write down the names of those notes. There are some ties here across the bar line, so you can hold that note. If you were listening and watching, you would have noticed that I didn't play that note, or that note, or that note. You just hold it all the way across. Okay? So it might be a little weird to be staying in one position here and then moving in the left hand. That's what's going to happen at measure 13. My left hand moves down. It's still doing the same pattern as it was in the beginning. This pinky, middle, thumb, I should say 5, 3, 1, 3. That's better. Okay? And then this one moves down, but my right hand stays in the same spot. So what a great idea it would be to just listen to my recording, especially the first one that's slower, and once you've learned the right hand a little bit, to play along with my right hand when we get to measure 9. So ignore that left hand, let it play its thing, and you just try to count and follow along. Now let's talk about how to count this. So it's in 4/4, so if you've listened to what I've said about 4/4 time, it has 4 quarter notes. So maybe you should count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 but actually for a piece like this, that one might be kind of harder. So instead, I'm counting each group of these 4 notes as a beat, a 1. And then the next one would be 2. So then there's only like 2 counts per measure. So as I'm going in my left hand, I'm kind of thinking of it as 1, 2. Like that. And that way, what I'm doing here at measure 9 and 10 is I'm counting 3 of those while I hold that first note in the right hand. 1, 2, 3, and then I start playing these next notes in the right hand. Okay. So that's just how I'm counting it. By the way, another great way to practice this section or even this section is because now the hands are doing something different. It's actually easier to do this, even though there's more notes, than it is in the mind mentally to be able to do different things. So a great idea is to start by not counting so much what's happening exactly as it's written, and practice again. The idea of my left hand's doing this pattern and my right hand is holding long notes. So totally practice this for a while. Left hand plays the pattern just like this, not changing positions, while your right hand plays anything else with long, slow notes like this. Here we go. See, and I can just, because what'll happen is as soon as you start playing this, then the left hand will start to buckle and not be as secure. So, especially if you start trying to change notes, then suddenly the left hand's like, I can't do it, because now your brain is focused here. So you need to be able to teach your brain and your hands, your left hand especially, to keep going no matter what the right hand does. So you just, see, I'm just practicing the idea of keeping that left hand going, even though my right hand's going to be playing these other long notes. See that? Now, if I just start playing random rhythms, that's totally going to mess me up. So I'm still sort of counting, not really counting, but I'm keeping track of this beat. That one. My pinky in my left hand kind of keeps the beat. So when I change notes in the right hand, I might change on that beat. See that? Pinky in the left hand, pinky in the left hand. Something like this. Now that would be half notes in this hand, but I do see some quarter notes. So you could also practice pinky and thumb being your beat. Beat and beat and beat and beat and beat, and playing right hand notes on those beats. Note, 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 note. Anything you want, okay? And the more you practice the idea of what's happening in a piece, the way more prepared you're going to be when you're actually learning the piece. You'll learn it faster, promise. Okay, so places you want to practice are this transition from measure 12 to 13, because you have a different rhythm here, quarter notes to a dotted half note, and you're changing left hand positions. So I would practice, if I was you, from around here to just there, like stopping right at the beginning of 13. So, and that might look like this. That's literally the second half of measure 12 and the first beat of measure 13. Now I could also play the first few notes of that position to make sure that I've got the position right. I'm not accidentally doing extra notes or something. That'd be pretty good. The first half of measure 13. Yep, like that. Like that. Okay, so that section you want to practice. Also, and it's always going to be, it's just the way sheet music is. The hard parts are always the transition between the end of one line and the beginning of the next line. Also, the repeats, because your eyeballs have to go back the way, over there. Your fingers have to change position. So this would be another one, is this transition, these last two quarter notes and starting that new position. Maybe you could start by just playing this left hand pattern on the G position. This is G major. Again, I'm on A position here, G position here. I have C, B, A. So I can just practice those. And that would be my transition to the measure 9. So it'd be like this. Ready, here it comes, C, B, A, and just practice that. And I know it'd be so easy to keep going, but the best kind of practice, the most efficient, is when you're goal-oriented. So focus on that spot, and then stop and go back and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And not, it's so tempting to go on and be like, oh yeah. And it's fun. Actually, it's not like the worst thing. It is fun if you want to have practice and enjoy practice more. That's okay too. But I do promise you will make progress faster if you give it a few extra repeats, and then you'll earn yourself some time to carry on. So that spot would be just like that, and I'd go again. Just like that. Okay, and then similarly, you want to practice the transition from here to here. Again, the end of one page to the beginning of this page is always going to be everyone's weird spot. I think just because the eyeballs have to move, and in this case, the hand has to move. So that's a tricky transition. Okay, different chord pattern finally in this section up here. So same way you practice the other one, practice the transitions from one position to the next. In this case, at measure, let's see, 17, 18, 19, it's going to keep these two notes, but the A is going to be now a G. Now, I'm using my third finger on the C at 17 and 18, so it'd be tempting to just keep using that third finger, and that would be okay. You could totally do that. When you move to 21, you'll just move this third finger down, because that's what it does there on 21. You'll move down to a B. that's the position at 21 and 22. Or this is what I would do. At 17 and 18, I'm here. And then at 19 and 20, I'm going to move the pinky down to G, and I'm going to use my second finger on this C. Because that shape fits that hand shape fits a little better on those notes. And then when I go to 21, I'm just going to switch fingers to my third finger on B. Okay? And then finally 23 and 24, you just move the thumb down from the E down to the D. So that's the left hand pattern for this section. I'll play it again. Practicing it this way too. Not as a broken chord always, but as just a blocked position like this. Just play all the notes at once. And then you practice moving all the notes wherever they need to go. In this case, it's one note, but two fingers are changing. And then 21, and then 23. So I just practice that. That's a good practice strategy, okay? Almost done. Measure 25 and 26. This is now both hands moving. Thank goodness, that's kind of easy. And then we get this E major chord, which we haven't had yet. So E major is going to have a G sharp in there. And finally, the pattern isn't up and down, it's just up. And then it moves all the way back up to A. So it's this, and then both hands move, and then both hands move, and then both hands move. And that nice little quarter note is being nice to you because if it was here and then you suddenly had to go back up, that would be a little wonky of a position. So when it stops on the thumb, then you have the opportunity to kind of reset and put the whole hand. Watch this. So I'm kind of doing that squish, but this time in my left hand. Kind of squish in the hand, pinky to thumb, kind of squish in that closed position. So that, boom, I just pop the thumb over to the E. Like that. So that would be a thing I would just isolate and practice. It's this E major chord to that A minor chord right there to there. Just those notes like this. Okay. And then there's a fermata at the end of measure 28. So when you finish that one, you can totally reset and then get back to the pattern as before in measure 29. All right, I think that's about it. Good luck with January winds.